My name is Marie, and I'm 57 years old. 28 years of marriage to Jack ended when cancer took him last month. We built a beautiful life together, even without the children we desperately wanted. Now, I'm trying to navigate grief one day at a time. When my sister Amanda invited me to her son's first birthday party, I never imagined what would happen next. The party wasn't just a celebration, it became the moment that shattered everything I thought I knew about my life with Jack. Before I share with you the most painful moment of my life, please let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next in this story that changed everything for me. Jack and I met 30 years ago at a small coffee shop in downtown Seattle. I was working as an elementary school music teacher, and he was a structural engineer for a growing construction company. Our eyes met across the room, and he smiled at me with such warmth that I couldn't help but smile back. After 20 minutes of stealing glances, he finally walked over and asked if he could join me. We talked until closing time, and by the end of the evening, I knew there was something special about him. Our relationship blossomed quickly. We shared a passion for classical music. I played piano while he played violin, and we often spent evenings performing duets in his small apartment. We also loved traveling together, exploring new cities, and immersing ourselves in different cultures. Within a year, we were inseparable, and I couldn't imagine my life without him. When Jack proposed on my 29th birthday during a trip to Lake Tahoe, I said yes without hesitation. We had a small, intimate wedding at a charming chapel with just our closest friends and family. My sister Amanda was my maid of honor, looking stunning in her lavender dress. At 22, she was 7 years younger than me, and despite our age difference, we had always been close. After the wedding, Jack and I immediately started trying for children. We both dreamed of a big family, at least 3 kids running around our home. But month after month, my period arrived with crushing reliability. After 2 years of disappointment, we consulted a fertility specialist who recommended several treatments. The next 5 years became a blur of doctor appointments, hormone injections, and multiple rounds of IVF. Each failed attempt drove a knife deeper into my heart. I remember crying myself to sleep many nights while Jack held me tight, whispering that we would keep trying as long as I wanted. But after our 7th unsuccessful IVF cycle, we had to face the reality that biological children might not be in our future. The financial and emotional toll had become unbearable. Maybe this is the universe telling us to find a different path to happiness, Jack said one night as we sat on our porch swing. We have so much love to give each other. Maybe that's enough. It took time to heal from that wound, but eventually we embraced our life without children. We channeled our energy into our careers, our hobbies, and our relationship. Jack's engineering firm grew, and I became the head of the music department at my school. We traveled extensively during summers, Italy, Japan, Australia, creating memories that filled the space that children would have occupied. When we turned 40, we decided to build our dream home. Jack designed every aspect of it, incorporating both our personalities into the architecture. Large windows to let in natural light for my plants, a music room with perfect acoustics for our instruments, and a spacious kitchen for Jack's newfound passion for cooking. We poured our savings and souls into that house, which eventually appreciated to around $800,000, our most valuable asset. Throughout these years, my relationship with Amanda remained strong. While I settled into married life, she flitted from one relationship to another. She was strikingly beautiful with her auburn hair and green eyes, but she struggled to find stability. Her romantic choices often left her heartbroken, and Jack and I were always there to help her pick up the pieces. "I wish I could find someone like Jack," she would say during our sister wine nights. "You got so lucky, Marie. He's kind, successful, and completely devoted to you." I would smile, feeling a mix of pride and sympathy for my sister. Amanda had always been impulsive and somewhat self-centered, but her heart was in the right place. When she lost her job during the economic downturn, Jack and I covered her rent for 6 months. When she wanted to return to college to get her nursing degree, we helped with tuition. We considered it a blessing that we could support her, given our comfortable financial situation. Every Thanksgiving and Christmas, Amanda would join us at our home. We created family traditions together, making gingerbread houses, watching classic holiday movies, and exchanging thoughtful gifts. Jack treated her like his own sister, always making sure she felt included and valued. During summer barbecues, I would watch them laughing together as they debated the best way to grill corn or mix the perfect cocktail. Those were happy times filled with warmth and connection. I never imagined that everything would change so drastically, or that the foundation of trust we had built over decades could crumble so quickly. But life has a way of testing us when we least expect it, and our test was coming soon. The first signs appeared so gradually that we almost missed them. Jack began experiencing frequent headaches and unusual fatigue. Initially, we attributed it to stress from a major project he was overseeing. But when he started forgetting simple things and occasionally slurring his words, I insisted he see a doctor. The day of his MRI, I sat in the waiting room flipping through outdated magazines, expecting to hear that he needed more sleep or maybe blood pressure medication. When the doctor called us both into his office, his grave expression sent ice through my veins. "I'm sorry to tell you this, but we found a significant mass in your brain," he told Jack. "Given its location and appearance, we need to do a biopsy immediately." The next week passed in a blur of tests and specialists. The diagnosis was devastating glioblastoma multiforme, an aggressive brain cancer already in its advanced stage. The oncologist tried to soften the blow, but the message was clear. Jack had approximately 6 months to live. Treatment could potentially extend that time slightly, but a cure was not possible. "I want to try everything," Jack said, firmly squeezing my hand so hard it hurt. "I'm not ready to leave you, Marie." We embarked on an exhausting journey of treatments. Radiation left Jack nauseated and weak. Chemotherapy took his hair and appetite. Experimental drugs gave us brief hope before proving ineffective. Through it all, Jack maintained his dignity and humor, even on days when he could barely get out of bed. "Promise me you'll play piano every day after I'm gone," he whispered one evening as I helped him take his medication. "Music always brought us together. Don't let it die with me." I promised, though the thought of playing without him listening made my heart constrict. As Jack's condition deteriorated, he began organizing his affairs with remarkable clarity during his good days. He met with our financial advisor to ensure I would be taken care of. He wrote letters to friends and colleagues. He updated his will with our attorney, Frank Thompson, making sure everything was in order. "Everything goes to you, Marie," he told me afterward. "The house, investments, life insurance, all of it. You've been my entire world." During these difficult months, I noticed Amanda's absence. She called occasionally to check on Jack's condition, but she rarely visited, always citing work obligations or other commitments. When she did visit, her interactions with Jack seemed strained, almost awkward. I attributed it to discomfort around terminal illness. Many people don't know how to act around the dying. By the 5th month, Jack was bedridden. I took a leave of absence from work to care for him full-time with help from hospice nurses. We spent our final weeks together reminiscing about our favorite memories, watching old movies, and simply being close. Sometimes he was lucid and present. Other times, the brain tumors would cause confusion or personality changes that broke my heart. On a quiet Sunday morning with sunlight streaming through our bedroom windows, Jack took his last breath while holding my hand. The world stopped for me at that moment. 28 years of love, partnership, and shared dreams gone. I sat with him for hours, unable to accept that he was really gone, until the hospice nurse gently suggested it was time to call the funeral home. The funeral was held the following Saturday at the chapel where we had married. Colleagues, friends, and former students filled the pews. Jack's business partner delivered a moving eulogy about his brilliance and integrity. I was too numb to cry, moving through the day like a ghost. Amanda arrived late to the service with a baby in her arms. I knew she had given birth about 9 months ago. She had called to share the news while Jack was undergoing his second round of chemo, but this was my first time seeing my nephew. I remembered being surprised when she announced her pregnancy, especially since she hadn't mentioned dating anyone seriously. Now, seeing her at the funeral with the infant, something about her expression disturbed me. Rather than sadness, I detected a strange anticipation in her eyes as she approached me at the reception. "I'm so sorry, Marie," she said, kissing my cheek. Jack was a wonderful man. The baby in her arms stared at me with wide blue eyes, and for a fleeting moment, something about his face seemed oddly familiar. But grief clouded my thoughts, and I couldn't focus on anything beyond getting through that terrible day. The house echoed with emptiness after Jack's death. I wandered from room to room, touching his belongings, breathing in the fading scent of his cologne on his clothes. The silence was deafening after years of his laughter, his violin playing, and even the sound of his typing on his laptop late at night. Friends brought casseroles and offered companionship, but eventually they returned to their lives, leaving me to navigate my grief alone. I tried to follow routines, waking up, showering, eating, but everything felt mechanical and pointless. Each night I slept on Jack's side of the bed, clutching his pillow to my chest. 3 weeks after the funeral, I finally found the strength to begin sorting through Jack's personal items. His closet was first. I donated most of his clothes to a homeless shelter, but kept a few favorite sweaters that still smelled like him. His watch collection went into a special box I placed on our dresser. His books remained on the shelves. I couldn't bear to remove them. While cleaning out his desk, I discovered a letter tucked inside an unmarked envelope. It was written in Jack's distinctive handwriting, but appeared unfinished. The date at the top indicated he had written it just 2 weeks before his death, during one of his more lucid periods. "My dearest Marie," it began, "there are some burdens that become heavier as time grows shorter. I find myself thinking about responsibilities I've neglected and mistakes I should have corrected long ago. When we face death, the truth becomes both more important and more difficult to share." The letter continued for another paragraph about how much he loved me and how grateful he was for our life together. Then it abruptly stopped mid-sentence. "I need to tell you about something that happened with—" I read the letter multiple times, trying to decipher what Jack had wanted to confess. Had he made a bad investment he hadn't told me about? Was there a secret debt? The mysterious fragment nagged at me, but I eventually placed the letter in my keepsake box, assuming I would never know what he had intended to write. During this period, I noticed a shift in Amanda's behavior. She began calling more frequently, asking detailed questions about how I was doing financially and whether I had spoken with Jack's attorney yet. Her sudden interest in my finances seemed inappropriate given my fresh grief, but I dismissed it as awkward attempts to check on my welfare. One evening in May, about 6 weeks after Jack's funeral, Amanda called with an invitation. "I'm throwing a first birthday party for Liam next Saturday," she said, referring to my nephew. "It would mean so much if you could come." My immediate instinct was to decline. The thought of celebrating anything felt wrong when my heart was still shattered. How could I paste on a smile and sing happy birthday when I could barely get through each day? "I don't know, Amanda." I hesitated. "I'm not really in a party mood." "Please, Marie," she pressed. "Family is important now more than ever, and there's something important I need to discuss with you. It's about Jack." The mention of Jack's name caught me off guard. "What about Jack?" "It's better to talk in person," she replied cryptically. "Just come for an hour. It would mean a lot to me." Against my better judgment, I agreed. Perhaps getting out of the house would be good for me, and if Amanda had something to share about Jack, I wanted to hear it despite the unsettled feeling her tone gave me. I recalled how Amanda had announced her pregnancy shortly after Jack's diagnosis. She had called one evening sounding both excited and nervous, explaining that she was expecting a baby, but the father wasn't in the picture. I had been so focused on Jack's treatment that I hadn't asked many questions, simply congratulating her and offering support if she needed it. Now, I wondered what she could possibly want to discuss about Jack. As I purchased a birthday gift for little Liam, a plush teddy bear, and some children's books, I tried to prepare myself emotionally for the party. I had no idea that I was walking into a situation that would shatter what remained of my world. Amanda lived in a small two-bedroom apartment in a modest complex across town. As I parked my car and gathered Liam's gifts, I steeled myself for the socializing ahead. I had barely left my house in the past month, and the thought of making small talk with strangers made my stomach churn. The moment I knocked on her door, I was struck by how elaborately the apartment was decorated. Blue and silver balloons filled the ceiling. An expensive-looking banner proclaimed, "Happy First Birthday, Liam," and a professional cake sat on a table surrounded by catered food. Amanda had never been financially stable enough for such extravagance, which immediately struck me as odd. "Marie, you came," Amanda exclaimed, opening the door wide. She looked different, her hair freshly colored and styled, wearing a new dress I hadn't seen before. She took the gifts from my hands and led me inside where about 15 people mingled in the small space. I didn't recognize most of the guests, which wasn't surprising since Amanda and I had different social circles. They glanced at me with curious expressions that made me uncomfortable, some whispering to each other as I passed. I felt like the subject of gossip before I had even settled in. Liam sat in a high chair at the center of the action, wearing a tiny bow tie and dress shirt. As I approached him, I was struck by his features. His eyes were a striking blue, his smile wide and charming. Something about him tugged at my memory, creating an unsettling feeling I couldn't place. "Would you like to hold him?" Amanda asked, already lifting him from the high chair and placing him in my arms before I could respond. The baby stared up at me curiously, his eyes searching my face. There was something familiar in his gaze, something that made my chest tighten with an emotion I couldn't identify. "He's beautiful," I said honestly, bouncing him gently. "He has such expressive eyes." "Yes, he does," Amanda replied with a strange smile. "Everyone says he has his father's eyes." Before I could respond, she took him back and announced it was time for cake. The guests gathered around as Amanda placed Liam back in his high chair. A woman I didn't know lit the single candle, and everyone sang "Happy Birthday." I moved my lips mechanically, feeling increasingly out of place among these strangers who seemed to know something I didn't. After the cake was served, Amanda clinked a spoon against her glass to get everyone's attention. My stomach dropped as she smiled at the assembled guests, then fixed her gaze directly on me. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate Liam's special day," she began. "But there's another reason I wanted everyone here today, especially my sister Marie." The room fell silent. All eyes turned to me, and I felt my face grow hot under their scrutiny. "As most of you already know," Amanda continued, her voice now carrying an edge I'd never heard before, "Liam is a very special child. He's the son of Jack Parker." For a moment, I thought I had misheard her. Jack Parker, my husband's name coming from my sister's lips, in this context made no sense. "Marie," she said, addressing me directly now, "I know this must come as a shock, but Jack and I had a relationship. Liam is your husband's son." The room spun around me. Guests murmured and stared, their expressions a mix of pity and morbid fascination. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself, unable to process the bomb Amanda had just dropped. "That's not possible," I finally managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm afraid it is," Amanda replied smoothly. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded document. Jack knew about Liam. In fact, he updated his will to provide for his son. She handed me the paper, which I unfolded with trembling hands. It appeared to be a will with Jack's signature at the bottom, stating that half of his estate should go to my biological son, Liam Brooks, born to Amanda Brooks. "As you can see," Amanda continued as I stared at the document, "Jack wanted to make sure his only child was provided for. Since the house is worth $800,000, I'll be expecting $400,000 as Liam's guardian." The room began to close in on me. Fragments of memories flashed through my mind. Jack and Amanda laughing together at family gatherings, their occasional lunch meetings when they happened to be in the same part of town, her sudden distance after his diagnosis. Had I been blind to what was happening right in front of me? Then another memory surfaced, Jack's unfinished letter. I need to tell you about something that happened with. Was this what he had wanted to confess? The pain was physical, like a knife twisting in my chest. 28 years of marriage and Jack had betrayed me with my own sister, had fathered a child when we couldn't have one of our own. The cruelty of it was unfathomable. I looked at Liam again, searching his features for Jack's. The blue eyes, yes, but Jack's eyes had been deeper set. The smile seemed similar, but not quite right. Something didn't add up, but in my state of shock, I couldn't think clearly. Amanda was still talking now, explaining to the guest how she and Jack had connected during a period when he and I were going through a rough patch. A rough patch I couldn't recall ever existing. Her words seemed to come from far away. As blood rushed in my ears, I knew I was seconds away from either collapsing or exploding in front of these strangers. With every ounce of self-control I possessed, I stood up straight, looked my sister in the eye, and said simply, "Oh, I see." Then, fighting to keep my face neutral despite the laughter threatening to bubble up hysterically, I set down my plate, thanked her for the cake, and walked out the door with as much dignity as I could muster. Only when I reached my car did I allow the tears to come, great heaving sobs that shook my entire body as the full weight of this new betrayal crashed over me. I drove home in a daze, barely remembering the journey. Once inside, I collapsed onto my sofa and let the sobs rack my body until I had no tears left. The magnitude of Amanda's claim was almost too much to process. If what she said was true, it meant that while I had been going through painful fertility treatments, my husband had impregnated my sister. While I had nursed him through his final days, he had been keeping this monumental secret. But something about the situation didn't feel right. As the initial shock began to subside, questions surfaced through my grief. Why would Jack never mention this to me, especially when facing death? He had been so careful about putting his affairs in order, and the will Amanda showed me looked different from the official documents Jack and I had prepared with our attorney. With shaking hands, I retrieved Jack's unfinished letter from my keepsake box and read it again. I need to tell you about something that happened with. Could he have been about to write with Amanda? The timing would match with his knowledge of Amanda's pregnancy, but the handwriting on this fragment seemed different from the signature on the will Amanda had shown me, more shaky, affected by his illness. I needed answers. The next morning, I called Frank Thompson, Jack's attorney, and our friend of 20 years. "Marie, how are you holding up?" Frank asked when he heard my voice. "Not well, Frank. Something's happened." I explained Amanda's claim and the document she had shown me. There was a long silence before Frank responded. "Marie, I need you to bring that document to my office immediately. What you're describing contradicts the will Jack and I finalized 2 months before his death." 2 hours later, I sat in Frank's office as he examined the photocopy of the will Amanda had given me. His frown deepened as he compared it to the official will in his files. "This is not the document Jack signed," he said, finally looking up at me with concern. "The legitimate will leaves everything to you with no mention of Amanda or any child. Furthermore, this signature appears to be forged. It's similar to Jack's, but the pressure points and certain characteristics are off." Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by rage. She's lying about all of it. "I can't speak to the paternity claim, but this document is certainly fraudulent," Frank confirmed. "Marie, this is serious. She's attempting to commit fraud." I left Frank's office with a copy of the real will and a recommendation to hire a private investigator. Within days, I had engaged Thomas Wilson, a retired detective now working as a PI. We met at a coffee shop away from my neighborhood to avoid any chance of running into Amanda. "I need to know the truth," I told him after explaining the situation. "Is Liam Jack's son? Did my husband have an affair with my sister? And why is she doing this now?" Thomas took meticulous notes and asked probing questions about Amanda's relationship with Jack, her pregnancy timeline, and her financial situation. He was particularly interested when I mentioned that Amanda had recently completed nursing school and had worked briefly at the hospital where Jack received treatment. Let me look into this, he said. I'll need a few weeks. Those weeks were among the most difficult of my life. I vacillated between doubt, anger, grief, and guilt. Had I missed signs of an affair? Had Jack been living a double life? I re-examined every memory, every interaction between Jack and Amanda, searching for clues I might have overlooked. 3 weeks later, Thomas called with news. I found something interesting, he said. Can you meet today? At our meeting, he slid a folder across the table. Amanda Brooks worked in the administration office at Seattle Memorial for 4 months during your husband's treatment. She had access to patient records and samples. What does that mean? I asked, though dread was already building in my stomach. It means she could have obtained your husband's DNA without his knowledge, Thomas explained. Furthermore, I've discovered that Amanda was dating a man named David Turner around the time she conceived. He has blue eyes, similar to your husband's. They broke up shortly after she learned she was pregnant. He showed me a photograph of David, a handsome man with striking blue eyes, very much like Liam's. The resemblance was much stronger than any similarity to Jack. I've also tracked Amanda's financial situation, Thomas continued. She's in significant debt, credit cards, student loans, and a personal loan with high interest. She's facing potential eviction from her apartment. The pieces began falling into place. Amanda wasn't just making a cruel claim, she was executing a calculated plan motivated by financial desperation. The realization that my own sister would exploit Jack's death and my grief for money was almost more painful than the thought of Jack's betrayal had been. There's one more thing, Thomas said, pulling out another document. I managed to obtain a strand of hair from Liam's hat at daycare. With your permission, we can conduct a DNA test comparing it to a sample from Jack's hairbrush that you provided. It won't be admissible in court, but it should tell us what we need to know. 2 days later, Thomas called with the results. The test is negative, Marie. There's no genetic relationship between Jack and the child. I hung up the phone and sat in silence processing this final confirmation. My husband hadn't betrayed me, but my sister had betrayed us both in the most profound way imaginable. Now I needed to decide what to do with this information. I spent a week planning my confrontation with Amanda. With Frank's guidance, I assembled all the evidence, the authentic will, the DNA test results documentation of Amanda's access to Jack's medical records, and financial reports showing her desperate situation. I also had statements from 2 nurses who remembered seeing Amanda in areas of the hospital where she had no legitimate reason to be. On a sunny Tuesday morning, I texted Amanda asking her to come to my house to discuss settling Jack's estate. She responded immediately, suggesting we meet at a coffee shop instead, but I insisted it needed to be at the house because of the documents involved. Eventually, she agreed to come that afternoon. I arranged the evidence in folders on the dining room table and asked Frank to wait in the guest room as a witness if needed. When Amanda arrived, she entered with an air of confidence that made my blood boil. She had brought Liam, perhaps thinking his presence would make it harder for me to confront her. Thanks for agreeing to meet, she said, settling Liam in his carrier. I've been thinking about how to make this transition as smooth as possible for everyone. I gestured for her to sit at the table. Before we discuss anything, I have a few questions. She smiled condescendingly. Of course. This must still be difficult for you to accept. When exactly did your relationship with Jack begin? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Amanda launched into a well-rehearsed story about how she and Jack had connected during a time when he was feeling unseen in our marriage. She claimed their affair had been brief but intense, and that when she told him about the pregnancy, he had sworn her to secrecy to protect my feelings. I let her talk, watching as she embellished the tale with details meant to sound convincing. Secret meetings, emotional conversations, promises about the future. When she finally finished, I opened the first folder. Amanda, I've had the will you showed me examined by Jack's attorney, I said, sliding the analysis across the table. It's a forgery. Her expression flickered briefly before she recovered. That's ridiculous. Jack signed it himself. Your lawyer is just trying to protect you. I also had a DNA test conducted, I continued opening the second folder. Liam is not Jack's son. At this, her face paled. You had no right to test my child without consent. Those results could be wrong. They're not wrong, I said firmly. But what's most disturbing is how you obtained Jack's DNA in the first place. I opened the third folder containing the hospital employment records. You accessed his medical files and samples while working at Seattle Memorial. That's a violation of HIPAA laws and potentially criminal. Amanda stood up abruptly, causing Liam to startle in his carrier. This is harassment. I'm leaving. Sit down, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous calm. I'm not finished. Something in my tone made her comply. She sank back into the chair, eyes darting to the remaining folders. I know about your financial problems, I continued. The credit card debt, the loans, the pending eviction. I understand desperation, Amanda. What I don't understand is how you could use Jack's death and my grief as an opportunity to solve your money problems. You don't know what it's like, she finally whispered, dropping the facade. Being a single mother struggling to make ends meet. You and Jack always had everything, the perfect marriage, financial security, your beautiful house. I've had nothing but bad relationships and struggle. So you decided to claim Jack fathered your child, to forge a will, to announce this lie at a birthday party in front of witnesses. My voice rose despite my efforts to remain calm. Do you have any idea what that did to me, to Jack's memory? I needed help, she cried, tears now streaming down her face. You wouldn't miss the money. You have this huge house all to yourself. Jack would have wanted to help me and Liam. Jack did help you, I shouted, finally losing my composure. We paid your rent. Your tuition, bailed you out countless times over the years. And this is how you repay his generosity, by dragging his name through the mud. Liam began crying at the raised voices, and Amanda picked him up, clutching him like a shield. What are you going to do? She asked, fear evident in her voice. I took a deep breath, centering myself. That depends on you. Here are your options. You can publicly retract your claims about Jack and never mention this fiction again. If you do that, I'm willing to help you with Liam's education through a trust fund I'll establish. Her eyes widened at this unexpected offer. Or, I continued, you can persist with this lie, in which case I'll pursue legal action for fraud, defamation, and potential criminal charges related to the forged will and medical privacy violations. Frank has already prepared the paperwork. I gestured toward the guest room where Frank was listening. Amanda's face contorted with rage. You would sue your own sister, the mother of your nephew. You tried to steal from me using the most painful lie imaginable, I replied evenly. You've left me no choice. Fine, she spat. Take your money. But don't think this is over. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are. Cold, vindictive, willing to punish an innocent child because you're jealous you couldn't have one of your own. Her words were designed to cut deep, but I was beyond being wounded by her manipulation. If you ever speak publicly about Jack again, in any way that damages his reputation, the offer is withdrawn and we proceed directly to court. Are we clear? Her silence was answer enough. She gathered Liam's things with shaking hands and headed for the door. One more thing, I said as she reached for the handle. I loved you, Amanda. We both did. That's what makes this betrayal so unforgivable. She paused for just a moment, her shoulders slumping slightly, before walking out without another word. As the door closed behind her, I felt a strange mixture of victory and profound sadness. I had won this confrontation, but at what cost? The sister I had known and loved was gone forever. The months following my confrontation with Amanda were a dark time. Though I had exposed her lies and protected Jack's memory, the victory felt hollow. I had lost not only my husband, but also my sister, leaving me more alone than I had ever been. At night, I would find myself staring at old family photos, wondering how Amanda could have changed so dramatically from the sweet little sister who once followed me around in admiration. The betrayal cut bone deep, compounding the grief I already carried for Jack. Some days, I barely found the energy to get out of bed. Other days, anger fueled me through hours of furious cleaning or gardening, as though I could somehow scrub away the pain. Friends called and visited, but I kept most at a distance, unsure who I could trust after being deceived so thoroughly by someone I loved. After 3 months of this isolation, my neighbor Carol convinced me to attend a support group for widows and widowers. "You don't have to say anything," she promised. "Just listening might help." Reluctantly, I agreed. At my first meeting in the church basement, I sat silently as others shared their stories of loss and survival. Though our circumstances differed, the raw grief in their voices mirrored my own. For the first time since Jack's death, I felt less alone. It was there that I met Susan, a 62-year-old former librarian who had lost her husband to heart disease the previous year. Like me, she had experienced family conflict after her husband's death. Her brother-in-law had contested the will, claiming her husband had promised him a valuable coin collection. "Grief makes people strange," Susan told me over a coffee after our third meeting. "Sometimes it brings out the worst in those you thought you knew best." Her understanding helped me begin to process Amanda's betrayal, not just as a personal attack, but as a complex human failing born of desperation and perhaps even mental instability. While it didn't excuse her actions, this perspective helped ease the constant anger I had been carrying. At Susan's suggestion, I began keeping a journal not just about my feelings, but about memories of Jack I wanted to preserve. Writing about our first date, our wedding day, and the thousands of small moments that had made our marriage beautiful helped me reconnect with the joy we had shared rather than focusing only on his absence. During this time, I also reread Jack's unfinished letter, repeatedly finally gaining clarity about its meaning. The responsibility and mistakes he mentioned weren't about an affair or secret child, but about his regret that we hadn't adopted after learning we couldn't conceive. He had been more resistant to the idea than I had, preferring to focus on our life together. Facing death, he had wondered if that decision had been selfish. The realization brought me a measure of peace, confirming what I had always known about Jack's character. 6 months after Amanda's revelation, I made a decision that surprised even me. I would sell our house. Though Jack and I had loved it, every corner held memories that had become painful to revisit daily. I needed a fresh start somewhere without the ghost of both my husband and the sister I had lost. I found a smaller home near the coast about 30 miles from the city, with large windows overlooking the water and a small garden perfect for the native plants. It felt like a place where healing might be possible. The sale of our home gave me financial security and allowed me to donate a portion to brain cancer research in Jack's name. In my new community, I slowly built connections. I joined a local garden club and volunteered at the community theater. When a neighbor mentioned that the elementary school needed a piano teacher for their after-school program, I offered my services. Teaching music to children who otherwise couldn't afford lessons gave me purpose again. One rainy afternoon, nearly 2 years after Jack's death, I received an unexpected letter with a familiar handwriting on the envelope. Amanda had written me a 3-page apology, explaining that therapy and time had helped her see the gravity of what she had done. She didn't ask for forgiveness or money, simply expressing remorse for the pain she had caused and sharing that she and Liam were doing well in a new city. I sat with the letter for weeks, unsure how to respond or whether to respond at all. Eventually, I sent a short note acknowledging her apology and expressing hope for her continued healing. It wasn't forgiveness I wasn't sure that would ever be possible, but it was a small step toward letting go of the bitterness that had been poisoning me. 3 months later, Amanda called asking if she could visit with Liam, now almost 3 years old. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet them at a park halfway between our homes. Seeing Amanda again was surreal. She seemed smaller somehow, humbled by life in a way she hadn't been before. Liam was a happy, energetic toddler, completely unaware of the drama that had surrounded his early life. Our conversation was awkward at first, filled with careful small talk about the weather and her new job as a medical office manager. But as the afternoon progressed, we found ourselves sharing cautious laughter over Liam's antics on the playground. "I don't expect us to ever be close again," Amanda said, as we watched Liam climb a ladder. "But I hope someday you might be part of Liam's life. He should know his aunt." I studied the little boy's face, now clearly resembling the man in the photograph my investigator had shown me, not Jack at all. He was innocent in all this, a child who deserved love and family connections despite the circumstances of his early life. "I'd like that," I said softly, surprising myself with how much I meant it. In the years that followed, I built a new life, not the one I had planned with Jack, but one with its own meaning and joy. I expanded my piano teaching to include a free program for children with special needs. I traveled to some of the places Jack and I had planned to visit together, carrying his memory with me. I cultivated deep friendships that helped fill the void his death had left. Amanda and I never regained the closeness we once shared, but we established a cordial relationship centered around Liam. I became Aunt Marie, who taught him piano, sent birthday gifts, and occasionally took him for weekend adventures. Watching him grow gave me a connection to family I thought I had lost forever. The most profound lesson from this painful chapter came to me gradually, like the slow healing of a deep wound. I realized that true strength isn't found in never being knocked down. It's found in how we rise again after life has shattered everything we thought was certain. Sometimes the people we love most can wound us most deeply, but the power to define our lives doesn't rest in their hands or in the injuries they inflict. It rests in our ability to find peace and purpose, even after betrayal, to rebuild from the ruins with wisdom and grace. And now, as I watch my piano students perform at their year-end recital, I understand that family isn't only defined by blood or shared history. Family can be created through choice and love formed in the connections we nurture when we open our hearts again after pain. Life continues to offer its lessons, and fortunately, it also offers chances to begin anew. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? How did you find the strength to move forward? Please share your stories in the comments below. If my journey has touched you in any way, consider subscribing and giving this video a thumbs up. Your support helps me continue sharing these difficult life lessons with others who might be facing similar challenges. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that even in your darkest moments, healing is possible.